Hello, and welcome to the live stream for March 13th, 2022. We've got a lot of topics this week that were posted about in the coaching group. So I think it will be a good stream today. Have I been sailing? Have you been sailing? I was sailing. Yesterday was pretty good at Hokipo, very windy, abnormally windy. And I could have been on a 4.2 or a 4.5, probably not a 4.2. I could have been on a 4.5, but the smallest sail I brought was a 4.7, and it was still fun. It was still fun. Hey, Dom, Tomas, Samuel, good to see you guys. So I had a session. It was a little bit short. I sailed for maybe an hour or an hour and a half because Paul, who longtime viewers of the stream will remember, just bought a house on Maui, and he had a housewarming party, so I had to go to that. But was a fun, windy session. Yeah, I had fun. It was challenging with all the wind. Hey, Max. Hey, Ragnar. Very challenging with all the wind to make it work. Hey, John. But I enjoyed it. I think one of the most important things when it's so windy like that and you're trying to ride waves is really looking for the areas without too much chop, because most of the area or parts of the wave get really choppy when it's that windy, and that of course makes it a lot harder to turn. Hey, Henry, Dennis. I've been talking with a few people on Maui about doing some one-on-one coaching, some private windsurfing coaching. And there was something that came up yesterday that I thought was interesting. So one of the guys that I've been talking with here, he's a very good windsurfer. And so I was watching him sail for a few minutes. And hey, Carl, sorry to hear you're sick. Hey, Philip. So I was watching him sail, and this is, like, again, down the line conditions. And one thing I noticed is just with his technique, because he's a little bit back and behind the sail in his bottom turn. And I don't think that was affecting the way his board was carving at all. He was getting a really nice carve on the bottom turn. But what happened was it meant that he had trouble seeing the wave. And I could tell from how he was sailing that there was a certain lack of confidence because he couldn't see where he was going on the wave. And I thought that was an interesting point to bring up for the coaching for us. There's some aspects of technique that are maybe not about the hydrodynamics of the board, but about being able to see where you're going. And then that gives you confidence, allows you to really, push on the gas and charge for the lip because you can see what's happening, or get that high five, get that timing right because you can see what's happening. So that's a concept that I just wanted to throw into the group about that I think can be useful. That when we're talking about technique, or you're thinking about your own technique, don't just think about what the board is doing, or what the fluid dynamics of everything is, the aerodynamics, how to go fastest or carve hardest. Being able to see is also important. So if you can adjust your technique to be able to see where you're going, what's happening, that's probably something good. All right. Sounds like Samuel had a helitack session. Sounds good. Dennis had a big gear glassy session. Sounds good. Hey, Thomas. Cool. So sounds like you guys are still getting in the water, even though it's cold in Europe. All right, I'm going to throw let's get the Facebook group on the screen. All right. Here we are. Hey, Matt. We've got a lot of stuff in the group, so I'm just going to start rolling through it. Hello, hello France. Hello Rasmus. All right, so I'm gonna go and start with this question, and then we'll go back through the other things. So this question was inspired by someone sent me a private message about how to deal with these kind of conditions. I thought, well, this is a really good topic in the group, and I want to see what other people do. I know what I do, but I want to see what other strategies people are using when there's cross current, the wind is onshore, and it's difficult to get out and about because of the onshore wind and the current. And this is a situation that happens a lot in European beach breaks, especially in Northern Europe. So what do you do? And there was a lot of good responses in here. I like them. A lot of people say bigger board, bigger board, bigger board, bigger board, bigger board, bigger board, changing the fins. I found it interesting. Billy and Jeff, who are longtime windsurfers, both very experienced windsurfers, had somewhat really different answers, which I thought was interesting. And they're sailing in different conditions. You know, Billy's sailing in England, and Jeff is sailing in Oregon on the west coast of America. Hey, Tristan. Hey, Facebook user. Bump and jump day. So again, if you're on Facebook and you want me to see who you are, you have to give StreamYard permission to see you. And that's super easy. It's in, like, if you're watching the live stream on Facebook, it's in the description how to do that. So some interesting things in this thread. You know, when I posted the question, I mentioned bigger sail, bigger board, changing your fins. And I like seeing some answers here that are neither of those, you know, about raising the boom higher in those conditions to help get some early planing, going with a board that's maybe the same size but has a flatter rocker to get planing earlier, to get out sooner. So there's a lot of good answers. So what do I do? And so, like most of the answers here, I go with a bigger board first. I think that's my first approach. And then for these kind of conditions, I do have a straighter rocker than what I would use in Hawaii, what I would use on Maui, but it's not a straighter rocker than what I would use in most other places in Europe. It's basically, I'm using the Taboo production boards in these conditions, and I'm sticking with the Decurve. I don't go to the DeBalm, which has a straighter rocker, and I'll go from the 88 maybe to one of the 90 liter boards, and that increase in volume makes a big difference. I also will raise my boom a little bit as well, but I don't want to go with too big of a sail and keep the same board, because that can then overpower the rig, and it doesn't help as much. Like, just having that float really helps a lot to get out and get around in these difficult conditions. Whereas having the sail, having a bigger sail, sometimes it doesn't even help that much, because then you're sinking, the board is going, you know, the current is going with the wind. And then other times you're just way overpowered, the sail's unruly, it's hard to ride the waves, and that's then just not very much fun, and it's a difficult condition to be in. And I've had it in silt before, competing in silt before, where then I have too big a sail in order to get out past the shore break, and it's just too difficult then to do anything once you're out past the break. So I definitely agree with a bigger board. And one thing that I want to add that's maybe not so obvious is the benefit of adding a bigger fin. If you just add a fin that's 1 centimeter larger than what you're used to if you're riding a thruster, and I guess it's the same with a quad, going 1 centimeter more with the back 2 fins of the quad, that can also have a really big benefit. And it might feel a little bit strange to go on that bigger fin for the riding, but it's also amazing how quickly you get used to it. So after the first few waves, you'll feel like, oh, wow, this fin is too big. And then it just starts to feel kind of normal. I was always surprised in silt, for example, when we're competing, how much Jagger Stone would increase the size of his fin. So he would go from using 18 normally to a 20 centimeter rear fin in his thruster. And that helped him deal with the current, helped him get around. And I think sailing with a bigger fin like that is a really good exercise. And so I felt really uncomfortable going with a bigger fin at first. So then I started using a bigger fin in conditions where I didn't need the bigger fin, and really helped me get used to it. And that's something that I recommend playing with as well. And so you want to start using that bigger fin when you don't need it. It can help you get used to it. So we got a couple questions from the chat. Philip asks, what about the mast track position in onshore? Because, I don't tend to change the mast track position too much, but probably what I'm doing in most of these cases in the onshore conditions is I'm moving it back on the board. And maybe that's because I've got these bigger volume boards that are harder to turn. Those turns that we're doing in those really onshore conditions are more on the tail, and so I want to be more back on the board anyway. So if I'm moving my mast track at all, I'm moving it back, maybe about a centimeter. Dom says, okay, about the bigger fin, do you move it further back? No, I like to keep the fin pretty much in the same spot, just with the bigger area. Sometimes I'll move, if I keep the same fin size, then I'll move that fin back in the box. And that also helps you get around, right? Moving that fin back. But I prefer to go with a slightly bigger fin. But again, if I'm moving the fin and I'm not putting in a bigger fin, then I will move it back in the box. So Philip, does that answer your question? All right. So moving on. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting discussion. There's a lot of good answers in here. Thank you everyone who responded. And if you haven't read that thread, it's interesting to go through and see how people deal with these conditions. All right. Looking at some of the coaching, let's get into it. So we've got this from Dan. Dan is from Tenerife. And he's saying that he was quite powered on his 4.6, and he's only has a 102 liter board, and he's 87 kilograms. So the board is definitely a lot bigger than his weight. And he'd normally use a 90 liter board, but he's having trouble getting his 90 liter because of supply chain issues. And he is happy with his improvement since moving to Tenerife from Germany, but still wants to get better. So let's take a look at some of these sequences. So this is Dan. I don't know if you're with us in the chat. This looks like, is this one? This is a few different sequences. Sorry, looking at this, my brain at first was like, is that one sequence? What's going on here? Is it going sideways? Is it going up and down? But I think that this is actually 4 different sequences, and each row is its own. Oh, great. Dan's in the chat. Cool. So Dan, you say you want to improve your style. Do you have something more specific you can say about that? Like, for example, more speed, more spray, more whatever. What are you looking for? And I want to just go through these photos and get a look at them, to look at some things that we can we can talk about. I see a huge improvement in your sailing since moving to Tenerife. It's been huge for you. You know, I sailed with Dan in Europe before he moved to Tenerife, and I see just a massive improvement. Which Dan is, obviously a very dedicated windsurfer, but also I think just having all this extra time on the water to be able to apply that passion, it just shows, how valuable that is, and it really pays off. All right, so Dan is saying that spray is interesting, but also flow. I know a lot of people are really interested in spray. I'm not. It's funny. I'm not that interested in spray, but I know it is something that people pay attention to. But spray is basically just the amount of water that's being displaced by your board, and so you can do good turns with spray, but you can also make spray without doing good turns. So I don't know. It's a um, it's a factor, a variable that doesn't necessarily relate to how much you're on the rail. Um, it can relate a bit with speed. The faster you're going, the more water you can displace. Um, but yeah, as Dan points out, there can be a trade-off between spray and flow. And that can be the case because if you're displacing water and doing that by stopping, by jamming that board into the water, displacing a lot of it into the air, and then you're stopping, you're losing your energy, that's disrupting your flow. And so that's a very good point, Dan. And one of the reasons why I don't really pay attention to spray, but I know that people do. And so if that's something that you want to pay attention to, that's something that we can talk about. One thing I notice is some of these cutbacks you are really on the rail, like pretty much all of these on this first page. You look at the board, and the board is on its edge, cutting into the water. But then if we look at some of these other ones, the board is flat, right? So in this top row, the board is flat. Here you're getting a really nice carve on the bottom here. I like how that looks. And then here again, the board starts going flat. So I think the biggest thing to work on is getting the cutbacks to be all sort of like this on the rail rather than flat. I mean, this looks like a really nice turn. And so getting it to look like this rather than to look like these flatter ones. And it sounds so simple, but one of the just most obvious ways to do that is just to really think about keeping that board on the edge and really getting low, staying on your heels, using your legs as levers to just lever that board over onto the edge. If you're using a really big board, like you said you are, you might want to move the mast track farther back than you would normally ride it, which can just help to get the rail engaged. I can't tell where you are riding it. How far back are you riding the mast track on the board? But putting the mast track farther back will help in situations like this, on this bottom row here, where it looks like you're pushing, but the board is just staying flat. And just having that extra power a little bit farther back from the board can help get that rail involvement. Otherwise, so what does Tomas say? Tomas is saying to drop the butt more, bend your legs and hang down on the boom, keep the sail further away from your body. Yeah, and I think that is really good advice, and that was something that I was gonna say, is that you want to be low, really hanging from the boom, and especially with the big board. I mean, you want to be doing that anyway, but especially with the big board. And like one of the differences, when we're looking at like the photos where the board is more flat, you're a lot more upright than when it's more on the rail. But even in these ones where you're on the rail, I want to see you hang more from the boom. In most of these moves, you don't want to be very close to the sail. So like in the bottom turn, you're pushing the sail away from you. In the cutback, you're hanging from the sail. And so it's a pretty good heuristic that you want to have distance between you and the sail. You don't want to be holding it close to your body. And the reason for that, I guess, is that you want the widest range of movement that's possible to sort of get the board on its extremes rather than just staying flat. So getting low and hanging from the gear, really think about making distance between you and the sail. And that's something that can apply really for everyone in all kinds of windsurfing. Is you really, when you're riding a wave, you want to make distance between you and the sail. So in your bottom turn, you're pushing the sail away from you, and in your cutback, you're hanging from the sail. It's very rare that you want to be hugging the gear. So that's a rule. That's a heuristic that everyone can take away. All right, Dan, we've got a couple of things to work on. And of course, I don't want to overload you. I'll go through and check out the individual pictures after the stream and see if there's anything else that stands out to me. But moving that mast track back, getting low, really hanging from that boom, and getting separation from the sail and you will help. We don't see any bottom turn pictures here, but that will also apply to the bottom turn, and which can then help with the cutbacks. The bottom turn leads into the cutback. All right, moving on. We've got some nice posts from Caro. So Caro, unfortunately, is sick. Caro, I hope you feel better. She just got back to Europe from South Africa, where she had a good trip. And she posted these nice high five photos. And there's a nice video here. Guten Abend, JD Windsurfing. So I really like this turn from Caro, and it shows a lot of elements that we've been working on together, where she's really just focusing on getting the right timing and not worrying too much about trying too hard. And I think a lot of times in wave sailing, trying too hard is a big mistake that people make, because they want to get better. They want to do good turns. They want to go hard. And so they try hard. And this is such a paradox, but it shouldn't be hard work. And so if you're working hard, then you're kind of getting in the way of letting the elements all work together. And again, this is kind of a contradiction. It's kind of a paradox, because I'm not saying that it's easy. Learn wave sailing is hard. This is a hard sport. But if you're trying really hard and you're muscling everything, that's not right. And so you have to look for a bit of a looser approach, where you're getting to the right spot at the right time. And by being in the right spot at the right time, the energy flows. You're catching the energy from the wave, transferring it to board speed, and making it happen. And that's something that Caro does very well right here. And it's something that we've been working on together. And I love it. You can see the acceleration when she hits this lip. She's got the right timing, the right board placement, and accelerates out of it. And it's this beautiful turn. And you can see that she's not muscling it. She's not forcing the turn. And something that maybe was happening in the past, or we see other people, is really trying to muscle this turn and then losing that connection with the wave and actually losing speed. And this was a beautiful example of just setting up on that high five on that on that backdoor corner section, like I talk about. And these are sections that I really encourage people to look for, because it happens a lot and they're kind of easy to set up with the timing. So it's a really good exercise getting these turns on those corner sections. So great job, Caro. I like to see it. Caro, did you change your boom height as was suggested in the group? I don't know. Caro, I think, is in the chat. Did you adjust your boom? Did you play with it? And how, if you so, how did it feel? Hey, Dana Miller. Dana Miller is one of America's rippers, and so he said he's been sailing in Pistol Rivers. And Pistol River, I guess a lot of people know, it's it's in the windsurfing lore. Very fun spot to sail. And there's not just the main Pistol River location that you see all the videos of, which is kind of side onshore, starboard tack. There's also just around the corner, there's really good down the line spot. And then what Dana's talking about here is the jetty, which is a really fun place to sail, which is in the town of Gold Beach. Or maybe this is a different jetty. Actually, Dana's talking about two different jetties. Anyway, there's a lot of really fun sailing there. So sweet, Dana. Stoked that you got there. I really want to go back and get some more sessions on the American mainland. It's not something I've had time for in the last few years, but I'd really like to take my wife and my kids and show them the beautiful Oregon coast, California coast, and get some windsurfing up there. And I'd also like to do some coaching up there. And I know that there's some interest and some interest from the locals for coaching. And I encourage Europeans as well, if it's something that you might be interested in, just to jump on it. Whether it's with me for the coaching or just exploring the Oregon coast anyway for windsurfing. It's a really beautiful part of the world, and there's a lot of really, really great windsurfing. So Caro answered, and she said she had it pretty low, but put it a bit lower. I use it lower than most people. I'm having a lot of discussions about that, but she feels like she can surf waves better with a lower boom. And that sounds good. The one thing I would add, I'm constantly encouraging people to lower their boom, because I think a lot of people ride the boom too high, and if you have it lower, it can help a lot with the turns. But one of the things that is like a big theme, in addition, is just to always be experimenting. And so if you're used to riding it really low all the time, I would also say put it higher. Just see how it feels. And getting used to adjusting your gear like that is really valuable. It's valuable for so many reasons. One is it just helps you understand your gear better. So then that can help you make better decisions when you're tuning your gear based on the conditions. Two, by forcing your body to get used to these minor differences, it helps that you don't get stuck in what's the best way to say this? What I was going to say is stuck in a rut, but that has different connotations with ability. But what can happen is you get stuck in this comfort zone. That's what, let's call it. You can get stuck in this really narrow comfort zone, and then you're not used to anything different in your gear. If your harness lines are a little bit off, or your boom's a little bit off, or if you borrow a boom or borrow a sail or whatever it is, then you're really uncomfortable. And that's what we want to avoid. And so if you're making these little changes, then your body or your brain, your whole system is used to being able to adjust to these slight differences. And that's just better for your sailing. So I really encourage playing with it, playing with your gear. Putting your boom lower obviously has its benefits, but also if you're used to riding it really low, put it higher. All right, Eric, I would like to do coaching in Tenerife this year, as well as Denmark. I'll release some info about this soon. I just like, we just can't catch a break. I mean, I'm not laughing. It just, if it's not a plague, it's a war in Europe. It's just so hard. I guess I just need to announce some dates, and then maybe it will change, maybe it won't. Um, it just, it feels so far away, 2019 or whatever, when you could just say a date and confirm it and expect to be there, uh, without some kind of force majeure getting in the way. So I don't know. But yes, I definitely want to do some coaching in Europe this year. John, Oregon coast is incredibly fun. Beautiful place. Great for the kids as well. All right. Back to the group. Caro with another post. Just a brief update on things she was working on in Cape Town. So she was working on wave 360s and goose screws, and also working on the forwards. And so Caro's been working on the forwards for a while, and she's had a mental block that she's been working through. And I find this really fascinating to work with and to see her approach it. And so it's cool. She's been working on forwards mainly through the goose screw method. And she's also been working on the goose screws in the waves. And she's getting more height. I love seeing this, Caro. A lot of height, a lot of projection. So that is great to see. And so she said she's having some issues with the mast hitting the wave, and that would be helpful to see more of the sequence. Do you have more photos from the sequence so I can see exactly what's going on? But one thing in general with doing the goose screw, and this is a move that I really recommend most people do, because it opens up a lot in your windsurfing and teaches you a lot of different things, and a lot of different levels of wave sailor can start trying this move. That doesn't mean that you're going to land them, but you can start trying them, which I think really opens up. It just opens up some new skills. It's a great move to get into. But one of the things that you don't want when you're doing this, you want to avoid, is having a lot of your body weight, your like back, flying this way, because then you're landing on the sail, you're landing on your back, and you want to get some twist with your body, and you don't want to do too much with the sail. You know, if you do too much with the sail too early, then you just fall on your back. So you want to really keep the sail open, but you can really think about twisting more with your body. And I think, Caro, that's the next step. Now you've got this intro. And so we were working before about getting the right section, about getting, I love seeing this position. You've got the sail sheeted out. You've got this front arm close to your body. You're hitting this critical part of the wave. Right on. And so this is, we've getting to this point was huge success. So where do we go from there next? Next, I want to think about using your body to get more twist going in the move. And so where does that twist come from? It comes a lot from your hips and your torso, your core, where you think about just twisting, and it's not a huge twist. It's like 180 degrees, but you can do that twist quite forcefully with your torso. But again, keeping the arms open, keeping everything open. And you can push using your front arm to help steer the nose of the board in that. And then at some point you're going to sheet in the sail. But I really want you to wait with the sheeting in the sail, because if you sheet in too late, it doesn't make that big of a difference for the move. It's a little bit slower of a rotation. But if you sheet in too early, just nothing happens. You just slam on your back. So, Caro, I think the next step now is really focusing on, because you've got this great entry. I love to see it. It's just focusing on getting that twist with your torso, and using that front arm to help apply some pressure, pushing down on this front arm to steer this board, help it get into the rotation. So does that make sense? And Bart's asking Caro if you tried a new board yet. I'm also curious. That's something as well. We're talking about changing gear, trying different gear, and if you have one board that you've sailed on or one style of board that you've sailed on for years, I recommend trying something different. I'm not talking about buying something different, but just trying it, just having a session on it. And again, that really just opens up your sailing. And hey, Samuli. Samuli says is in Finland. So Samuli is one of the rippers from Finland in the group. He was on our masterclass in Denmark last year, and he said that the waves are still frozen solid in Finland. All right. Moving on. Jeff says, is Burns going to compete in the Canary Islands this summer? So he's leading the world tour, but he doesn't normally do the PWA tour. He doesn't normally do it. He just does Maui if it happens. And I and some other people are trying to convince him to go do these events because this is the year to do it. If he's ever going to compete in the Canaries, this is the year to do it. He's first coming in. He's going to have a spot. He's going to have a good seating. And, if he can just do okay in some of these events, he'll end up with an okay overall ranking. Maybe even a really, really good overall ranking. So I really think Burns should do it. Let's see how he does, or what he does, I guess is more what I should say. But I've already told him that I think he should do it. Josh Angulo was saying the same. All right. Samuel says, sometimes I see people doing radical moves on really small, soft waves. What do you think? Should I rather adapt my riding style to the wave and hope that someday I will meet a wave that teaches me to commit more or move faster? Or should I work on these skills no matter what the conditions? This is an interesting question, and it's something that made me really think when I first saw this posted in the group. Because I think Samuel brings up a really good point that there are some waves where it doesn't feel like there's much that's possible to do because the wave is so mushy or so soft or whatever it is. And I think that can be difficult, but there's always something to work on in those conditions. And maybe it's not about doing really hard lip slams, but maybe you can still work on your flow. You can work on being on the rail. And for some of the maneuvers like Takas, for example, it's a move that you can work on in quite weak waves that don't have a lot of power. So I think that you do want to adjust. I think it's a combination of what you're saying, because I think you do want to adjust what you're working on to fit the conditions, but you can still work on committing, moving faster, no matter what the conditions are. All right, Yusuf, hi. Great to see you in the group. Yusuf is working on back loops, push loops, surfing skills, and takas. Going to Pozo for 1.5 months. Nice. Pozo is a great training ground if you want to improve any of these things. So that sounds like a great experience. John is saying just about Capo Verde that some heats were canceled because of the conditions, but some riders were doing well. Yeah, this is a difficult topic. It's something I wanted to do another live stream with Ben Prophet, or he wanted to do one with me. I don't know what the plan is for that. I told him to let me know when he's ready to do it, and we were going to discuss some of these issues. It's a pretty hard call from the head judge when to cancel or not for a heat, and yeah, it's difficult. And then you definitely end up with some controversy, and there are some times, there's multiple heats, Jeff, where, the head judge of the PWA has canceled the heat because certain guys are not winning the heat. And I don't think it's a conscious thing. I don't think he's trying to protect them. I think what's the thinking that he has is that, okay, these are the best guys in the world. If they're not doing well, if they've got low scores, there must be something wrong with the conditions, which is not right. That's just not right. That's just not always the case. But that, I think, is what's happening subconsciously. So I remember a heat in Tenerife where this was most clear. It was on the top of the bracket side. It was Ricardo and Brasinho, and I think it was Ricardo against Moritz, and then Brasinho against Flo. And Moritz and Flo were having amazing heats. Ricardo and Brasinho were really fixated on trying to land a double forward, and the conditions were just not really double forward conditions. And so they were kind of obsessed with landing a double, which normally in Pozo and Tenerife is the key to winning a heat. And so there's like 5 guys that consistently do doubles, and those are the guys that are consistently in the top 5. But sometimes the conditions change a little bit, and it's just not really double weather. And that's what happened here. And so Ricardo and Brasinho were like going out and back, trying to do doubles, and then not getting other jumps, not getting wave rides. And Moritz and Flo were putting together really good heats, really nice riding, tabletop forwards, back loops, getting in solid jumps, solid scores. And it was fully contestable conditions. And the head judge, Duncan, canceled the heat. And there was a lot of controversy there. And, he canceled it because Ricardo and Brasinho were not doing as well because they were not winning the heat. But I really believe in my heart that it's not a protection. He's not trying to protect those top seeded riders, but there's something working in his subconscious saying, okay, well, these guys should be doing well and they're not. There must be something wrong with the conditions. This was a few years ago in Tenerife. And I think that's obviously a mistake, but the job is also really hard. And it's the kind of job, where people are willing and able to pick out the mistakes that you made, like I just did from an event 6 years ago. But when it all runs correctly, no one says anything, right? So if you run the heats in the correct order, like in the correct conditions, no one comments. That's just how it's supposed to be. So I think I know it's a very tough job because when you do it right, there's not much praise. And when you do it wrong, even just one time, it's something that people remember for years. So it's difficult. All right, let's get back to the coaching. All right, we've got some good answers here as well. And if you have a response to Samuel, post it in the group. I love, we got so much good discussion going on. And so if while I'm talking, you have an idea, post it. Here, Rich put this video trying to generate speed on really mushy waves, getting some flow. Looks good. All right, Nick asks about cameras. So he and Paul want to film each other to help with the coaching. Great idea. Thumbs up, double thumbs up. And there's a lot of good answers. So I give my advice, which might or might not be useful. I see that there's a lot of good responses here, like this one from Malcolm with this camera, which looks quite well priced, waterproofed, good zoom. The one thing I think that I can add, which is less about which camera to get, is that I think a tripod is pretty important. Maybe you can get away with a monopod, but having the stability really helps with the image quality. So a tripod, maybe you can get away with a monopod. But then whatever camera you choose, I think there's a lot of good options in here. One of the voices that's missing is Caro. Caro, I know that you and Claudius have some good solutions for filming each other. So if you want to add what you're using, and I know that you don't use a tripod, which I don't really understand how that works, but somehow you do make it work without a tripod. So yeah. Anyway, if anyone else wants to know about cameras to film themselves, check out this thread. And then if you have advice, post it in here. I'm not going to talk about this a lot right now because there's just not a lot that is better to talk about it rather than just reading the thread. But I do think having this stability is really important. Mark says that there are 2 dates on the BWA tour announced. Anyone thinking of entering? And that's the British Wave Sailing Association. And I was saying we should do some coaching on the live stream about competing. And this is something I think we did a little bit in the past, but we can do more of it. And so maybe we should do a specific post in the group. If someone wants to take that on, or otherwise I can do that after the stream, where people ask questions about competing, and there's no stupid questions. So I know a lot of people are maybe competing for the first time, or they don't have a lot of experience competing. And so there might be a lot of questions like, what time do I need to show up? You know, if I'm in heat number 7 and the skipper's meeting's at 10, do I need to be there for the skipper's meeting? Yes or no? What is important to take away from the skipper's meeting? How do I set my watch? How do heats run? How does this work? I don't know if they use a double elimination, but how does a double elimination work if it runs? And so there's no stupid questions. So we can do a post in here just with all kinds of questions about competing. And then next week we can talk about competitions and how best to compete, how to be best prepared for competitions, and how to do your best, which is, I think, what it's really about. It's not about getting the best place, because that matters really a lot on other people, but just about doing your best. All right. Moving on, we've got more entries into this competition. We've got sort of 50 comments so far. This is about the high five competition. And there's some good answers in here. There's no slam dunks though. There's no, so far there's nothing in the comments that really unlocks the move. But there are some good things in here. So there might already be some winners. You know, there can be multiple winners with this competition. But like I said, there's no real slam dunk. So if you have already commented, you can comment again. If you have, something that really unlocks getting that right position. And one of the things that people often do wrong is they're aiming too high for the curl instead of coming underneath it when they're trying to get the high five. All right. Henry, welcome to the group. Tells us about Japan. Very cool. I love windsurfing in Japan. I love Japanese windsurf culture. There's a lot of windsurfing in Japan. Japan is one of the big windsurfing countries in the world. We've got Germany, France, and Japan are the three big windsurfing nations. And there's a lot of good wave sailing, a lot of really keen and dedicated wave sailors. And it's really cool. On the world tour now, 2 of the top 8 riders are from Japan. Great to see. All right, this is an old question, which I think means that we're all caught up. Wow, that went quicker than I thought. We're all caught up, so that means here I can show you guys. I've got some footage from my last heat in Cabo Verde, which was at a different location, and it wasn't filmed by the PWA. It was a friend of mine was filming as well, and so he got some of my waves. And so we can just kind of look at these if you guys are curious. So let me just load it up. Just if you guys are curious, I remember someone was asking, I think last time about that. And of course, interrupt me with any questions that you might have. If you have any questions, interrupt me, coaching questions, any questions. All right, I'm going to pull up. Let's see if this works. Does that work? Okay, so I think I have to do these one at a time. All right, let's see if this is loading. For some reason, this has had, we had issues with this last time as well. I remember that. With the doing, let's see if there's a different way I can do this. Sorry about the delay here. This we changed software, which is a lot better for the streaming, but for some of these issues, it glitches out a little bit. So let's see. And if you have any coaching questions, all right, so I'm trying a different way to get the footage. Okay, that worked. So this is, so this was one of my waves from my heat. And again, this was really difficult conditions. We were on, basically on the rocks. This was a set wave. The conditions got better after this heat, and then they got a little bit worse as the day went on. So you can see some of the heats are recorded. They're on the PWA YouTube. But this was, this was a set wave, pretty choppy. So what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to get as much action as I can on these waves, because these waves are a little bit more closeouty than other waves. So getting multiple turns is very rewarded. So I kind of rushed this first turn. Like I wish I'd stayed a little bit on that cutback, a little bit more, but I'm looking at this wave walling up in front of me, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got to really get down the line, because I need to get in as many off the lips as possible, and just trying to keep my speed, and then whack this last section. One thing I really like about this last off the lip, which parts of it I feel like, it's nothing special, but one thing I really like is I'm able to keep the board carving. So here's a good example of the high five. Keep the board carving all the way down, so then it lands and I'm still carving. All right, Philip, I'll play the whole thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to be annoying by pausing it the whole time. So this is one wave, and then there's another wave that's going to come after this. And there are other waves as well, but I don't know where they are, or why they're not working with loading. So Tomas, these waves are flipped in the order. So these were my two scoring waves. So this first one was like a little bit over a 5, which I felt was kind of underscored, but that's okay. And then the second one, which starts here, was a 4. I don't know. It's pretty hard to judge in these conditions. And I knocked out my fins. So in this wave, which was not my first wave of the heat, my fins fell out. So I had one more set wave after this, but I rode it with the fins, my rear fin, and then one of the side fins popped out, which doesn't really work. So yeah, because basically we're on the rocks. Like this is rocks all in here. You know, it's really, really shallow. All right, let's see. I wonder if I can show one of these other waves. There's one other hit that I'd want to show. Let me see if I can. The problem is with screen sharing from QuickTime Player. So I don't know why it's giving us a problem, but this is also what happened before, where then it just wasn't working. So if this doesn't work, I guess what I could try to do is to open it in a different browser. But otherwise, I think that the file, I could try uploading the file as well. It might be too big because it's like a raw video file. Like the one that I just showed you was wow. Okay. It's interesting that this opens up. Thank you guys for being patient with me while I try and figure out how to play this footage. Like this is a huge file that I just tried to bring in. And I'm just bringing it directly into the program. And did I just crash the program? Can you guys still see me? Hopefully I didn't just crash it. All right. Let me know in the comments if you can still see me, because I've lost my, I can't really do much in the program. So is it still working in the comments? All right, I'm back. Yeah, so it just didn't work. I don't know what is going. So I'm gonna try. So someone recommended opening this in VLC and then trying to see if that works. So I'm gonna do that. That's the last thing I'm gonna try. Oops, now we got double. All right. Let's see. Thank you everyone for being patient. Yeah, so it crashed trying to bring in the big video file. It crashed it, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work with the other applications. This was working before. Yeah, I did hit rocks. I hit many rocks. So it looks like for whatever reason, this functionality is not working. anymore with this software, which is annoying because that was one of the great things about switching to the software, was how easy it was to play the videos. But what I can do then is I just have to render them smaller out of their raw format, and I can import them directly into the software, which takes a little bit more time for me, but it's something that I can do. Like, for example, those 2 waves that I did play, those were already, I rendered them smaller. So then I just brought in that small file and it just worked perfect. But with sharing from the application windows, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to work anymore. If anyone has any advice, I'm using StreamYard. If anyone has any advice, let me know. But otherwise, it seemed to work well for the other parts of the stream. And we were able to get through the coaching, which is the most important part. There's one more off the lip that I wanted to show. Anyway, I'll render it for next week. But basically, with those waves, we're riding on the rocks. And yeah, let me pull up that other one. We're riding on the rocks. And so, like, for example, this wave, at the end of this wave, I knocked out my fin, my 2 fins actually. And so there's another shot, like on my last because I couldn't really turn because the fins were working. So I go for goiter, and you can see that my fins are knocked completely back. So they're still held in to the board. So they're still there, but instead of being like this, they're completely sideways. All right. Well, I think that that's it for today, because it seems like the other video won't play. But someone asked about pumping. I'm pumping to get speed on the wave. Speed is your friend. The faster you're going, the more you can do, the more you can lean, the more you can do. And so when I'm pumping on these waves, I'm just trying to get going as fast as I can to be able to do as much as I can on the wave. And I don't like to pump so much during the ride. So what I try to do, and this is a style thing as well as a functional thing, is I try and pump before I start riding to get up to speed. But then once I'm riding, I want to be using the power of the wave as much as possible, because pumping can kind of get you out of the flow. But sometimes you do want to pump in the wave as well. Like here, I think I do a little pump to get to this section, and a little pump here to get to this section. But just keeping getting up to speed. So like here, I'm pumping just to get my speed up, and then once I've got the speed, and then I'm just trying to flow with the wave from there. All right. I'm going to sign off. It's windy today. The trees are moving. I don't know what's going on with the swell on Maui. Yesterday, there was some good swell, but the swell's come in a bit different than the forecast said it would. All right, wait. We've got some questions. So I'm not going to sign off before I answer the questions. John's saying, was it worth it? Was what worth it, John? Breaking the boards, was it worth it? Probably not. So I went to Cabo Verde with 3 of my favorite boards, and they all have a problem. So they're all in the shop getting repaired. And so I'm on a backup board, which actually is kind of nice, riding the old backup boards. The problem, John, is not so much losing the fins, because the fins are whatever. The problem is that knocking the fins out broke the boards. So it broke the box of the board, because the fin knocked back, and then the back of the fin went through the bottom of the box into the foam. And so that happened on 2 of my boards, 3 of my boxes. Not good. So yes, I do pump the board, Philip, and you can even see, let's make this bigger. So you should be able to even see that taking place. So when I'm pumping to get up to speed, let's watch this. So watch my legs. Oh, I don't know if this is what you're talking about. So you might be talking about in the bottom turn, like doing a double pump bottom turn. And yes, I am also doing that. But also really important when I'm pumping to get up to speed on the wave, I'm really using my legs. The legs are a very important part of that pump. And, we can see also we're talking about positioning and whatever, you want to have that bend at the knee, the bend at the waist, and then leaning forward. I mean, this is not an amazing little cutback, but kind of gives you a bit of an idea. This one is a bit more upright, a bit more of just like a, I don't know, lip smash. So Ragnar's saying that the judges want you to see us, the riders, to use the power of the wave rather than the sail. Yes, but are they always aware of that? And the answer would be no, because it's pretty difficult to always be paying attention. But like in one of these, just to answer your question, Philip, I think I do. Well, no, I don't do a double pump there, but sometimes I do pump the board like in surfing. And I think that is a very good exercise to do. It's just also just traveling down the line of the wave and pump it like you would on a surfboard. But yeah, when you're pumping to get into a wave or to get speed on a wave, and it's something that I do recommend actually people to do, because again, the faster you're going, the more you can do, the more you can lean, the more you can get to the section that you want to get to, the more control you have. And so pumping is a very helpful part of riding waves, actually. And when you are pumping, you really want to use your lower body to drive the board, drive the fins on the board. And so you can see, if we go back, where is that? I'm really pushing, getting low and then standing up and pushing on the board to pump the board. It's not just about the sail. Matt is saying, it was interesting to see how some riders caught a wave, put the sail back, and waited for the wave to form before doing the wave. I've never seen this, but we'll try it next time. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, John, same. Twinsies. In fact, I've actually got the guy that filmed this footage, Fishbowl, the one half of Fishbowl, great sailor, great guy, Paul. Different Paul than the live stream Paul. But you guys might know Fishbowl from the photos. Also is fixing my boards. All right, I'm going to sign off. We've got wind today on Maui. Hopefully we've got waves as well. And I can't wait to get on the water. So I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys all have a windy week. I'll see you in the Facebook group. And let's do a post. If someone hasn't already done the post, I'll do it. But I will do, but we should have a post about competitions. And there's no stupid questions. So if you want to compete, or you're curious about competing, you have any kind of questions, that's just the thread to do it. It will be in the Facebook group, and we'll talk about that next week. And as always, if you have your photos, videos, questions, comments, blah, 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 you can post it in the Facebook group. Link to the Facebook group is above if you're not in it. It's a really great community. I love where we're at. In every post, there's a lot of good answers from all of you. You guys are what make the community so valuable. So thank you for showing up. And I'll see you next week, Sunday. Take care.